Hi everyone and welcome to ScIQ. I have with me Sam Seder, another Young Turks partner and host of The Majority Report. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You ready to talk some politics?
I am always ready to talk some politics.
So we're going to be talking about the most jaw-dropping moments of the 2015-16 political debates. Let's get into the first point. Donald Trump saying Megyn Kelly was bleeding out of her whatever. This is a pretty big moment as far as the media went.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really big moment because, particularly because it signified that Trump was going to battle with Fox. And, you know, to a large extent, Fox created Trump. And it also sort of extended his brand of not being hemmed in when it comes to things like misogyny.
Let's have a look at the clip.
You could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever. She was off base.
So that was a pretty offensive moment for a normal politician, but not really as far as Donald Trump goes.
Yeah, I mean, this was, you know, just a brand extension to a certain extent. And I think, you know, I think he was basically putting down a marker, and he was sort of telling, he was in some ways, you know, working the refs, as they say. He was training the media to not mess with him, and that nobody was really off limits.
Do you think that it hurt Megyn Kelly's reputation or just boosted her reputation?
You know, I think it sort of enhanced it, but not necessarily in the areas that she was looking for. I mean, there was a lot of Fox fans who I think became sort of anti-Megyn Kelly. And I think that's happening with Fox to a large extent. Like they're, you know, this is like mommy and daddy fighting for them.
Yes, yeah. And from a neuroscience perspective, it was really interesting too, because Donald Trump was using the age-old tactic of name-calling. There's a thing called Graham's Hierarchy of Arguments, where at the top being a substantive argument talking about the main issue, and at the bottom being name-calling, when you don't really have any way of kind of, you know, attacking what Megyn Kelly was actually saying, which because she was talking about the true facts, you just resort to name-calling. It was an easy way for him to deflect.
Yeah, and I think he does that a lot. I mean, it does double duty for him, right? I mean, because one, he doesn't really know much about policy, or there's not much of a substantive argument that he's going to make one way or another. But it also plays on, frankly, you know, there's a huge portion of potential voters for him in the Republican Party who they like finally to hear a guy sort of not unlike them, except for the $1 billion, to put a woman in their place. And I think you know, I think we see a lot of that with Donald Trump. The sort of anti-PC is really sort of the last vestiges of things like misogyny and racism, and so they get their cake and they eat it too.
Let's switch sides now to the Democrat side, and we're going to talk about Bernie Sanders' apology for the data breach. Let's have a look at the clip.
Not only do I apologize to Secretary Clinton, and I hope we can work together on an independent investigation from day one, I want to apologize to my supporters. This is not the type of campaign that we run.
So kind of the very opposite to the Donald Trump approach. How do you think that played out as far as the Sanders campaign?
Well, you know, there was a lot of people who didn't think that the Sanders campaign had much to apologize for, but he wanted to get out in front of it. And I think the other part of it was, you know, look, particularly at that point in the campaign, Clinton was trying to make the argument that she was pragmatic and she could get things done, right? And so Bernie Sanders wants to project that he also has the ability to be a good manager. So he's extending this notion of like, I'm in control of this situation, so much so that I apologize for it. And I apologize to the supporters because I have a higher standard of sort of managerial expertise, I think. And so, I mean, I think it was pretty effective. And they, you know, the voter files got returned to the Sanders campaign, and nobody even talks about that anymore. And I think he was smart. You know, end the news cycle with an apology. There's really nothing else people can ask for.
Yeah. And from a cognitive perspective, it was interesting too, because he didn't just say, I apologize. He actually went and explained the whole situation and took a couple of minutes of very precious debate time to kind of induct the viewers. The same thing happened with Rand Paul in the GOP debates, where when they were talking about Glass Steigal, he actually went back and took some time, his precious 30 seconds, to explain what Glass Steigal was to the viewers. Do you think that's actually useful and a way of building trust? Did it work for Bernie?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think a lot with these debates in particular, it's the subtext that actually people are adjusting. You know, a lot of times you get a sense of, you can turn down the volume, they say, on these debates and watch the candidates, and you'll get a good read on how people are really absorbing what they're seeing. And I think, with this, it's all about the subtext. It's sort of the meta message. And the meta message for Bernie Sanders there was, I'm in charge, I'm a manager, even if I'm apologizing because some of my workers did something wrong. And in Rand Paul's case, it's, I'm not a lightweight. I understand policy and I'm going to explain it to you. And so I'm not sure that people listen to the specifics as much as they get that broad message.
Well, speaking of subtext, let's have a look at Martin OMalley's most shining and talked about moment. Let's roll the clip.
Martin OMalley happened to wander into the room and got himself settled. Touting his record, OMalley shifted to local politics. After all, from 1999 to 2007, he was the mayor of that shining city on the hill, Baltimore.
So you can see him doing that. He asked if he could stand, he asked if he could take his jacket off, he's standing there listening to questions, rolling up his sleeves. What do you think was the subtext behind that moment?
I think it's riding on the surface to a certain extent, right? I mean, Martin OMalley was always pushing the notion that you guys are talking about this stuff, I've done it. And so he's a roll your sleeve up type of guy. And I think also, Malley got caught really flat-footed. I remember months ago, probably a year ago now, I got a call from a Politico reporter who had been doing a piece on Martin OMalley, and he wanted to know what he could do to get the attention from Elizabeth Warren to him. And I was like, Elizabeth Warren? Yeah. You're running against Bernie Sanders. That's who he should be paying attention to. And I think he got flat-footed, didn't realize that Bernie Sanders was going to be as strong and appeal to as many people in the Democratic Party. And so I think he was doing everything he could at that point to both look like he's a guy who gets stuff done, but also a little bit of blue-collar quality. Like, I'm a man of the people. Look, I'm not so... Yeah, I don't have a jacket. I'm not stuffy. I'm one of you.
So man of the people,
didn't work.
Who gets stuff done. Didn't work. It was his last debate.
Yeah.
But when I watched that moment, in my head I was thinking, I wonder if the polls have shown that people like Martin OMalley because he's the best looking, he's the youngest, he's got a bit of sex appeal. Do you think that there was some sex appeal psychology going on behind this?
Like he's trying to show his forearms? I mean, I could tell you that...
billowing white shirt.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, maybe that was something to it, but, taking off the coat during a debate is like almost one of the most cliche sort of high school, college debate tactics there is. So I don't know. He's attractive, but it didn't work out for him. So
it was very talked about, but didn't quite. It wasn't quite the boost that he needed.
No, I think he would have had to taken his entire shirt off, I think, to have gotten the attention he needed at that point.
Maybe not the votes. Or maybe he would have got the votes.
I don't know. Maybe a couple of nipple rings and he has the shirt off. But no, yeah, just rolling up the sleeves was just not going to do it for him.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for talking about jaw-dropping debate moments with us, Sam.
My pleasure. If
people want to hear more politics from Sam Seder, where can they go?
Every day we do the Majority Report live on YouTube at youtube.com/Sam Seder. If you like it as an audio podcast, check us out. We're on all the, the iTunes and everywhere else. It's the Majority Report, or you can go to majority.fm.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
This has been ScIQ.
Hi everyone, I'm Jayde Lovell, resident science nerd on the Young Turks Network. You're watching ScIQ and we know you don't want to miss an episode, so please click the subscribe button down below.